Audible?
Myself, Anushka Singh, Assistant Professor at Parul University from the Department of Food Technology. As it is mentioned today, the webinar on method of microbiological examination of food by Ms. Prerna Joshi, a competitive exam aspirant, and she is expert in her field of biotechnology as she has completed graduation subject in BSc Biotechnology Honors from Amity University, Noida, and her post-graduation is in MSc Biotechnology from Uttaranchal University. Nowadays, she is preparing for GATE and UGC NET examination. She has a lot of knowledge in her field as she has completed her internship from Central Molecular Research Lab, Dehradun, and Indian Glycol Limited, Uttarakhand. So let's begin today's session with warm welcome. And yes, maybe there will be some network or voice issue in between webinar. So please be patient with that. Okay, now, ma'am, please continue.
A very good afternoon to everyone, to the entire panel, to all the faculty members, to the HOD and other students. My name is Prerna Joshi and I have pursued my Masters in Biotechnology from Uttaranchal University, Dehradun. And right now I'm preparing for the various competitive studies. And today I'm here to present my webinar on the topic Methods of Microbial Examination of Food. So here my slides begin. The first question that arises that why is it a need to examine a food? So we come up with the aspects like we want to know the level of contamination during the handling of a food products. We see nowadays that when we go to the market, the people are using the ready to eat food products again and again, and there are chances of contamination, the bacterial contamination, the airborne particle contamination, and so. The other aspect to examine the food is to know whether the food or the ingredient meet the normal standard guidelines. That is, the ingredients that have been used to manufacture the product, are they fresh or have they they have a good supply or not? Then the other aspect is to estimate the source, the load, or the type of microorganism that have been used to make the food. Say, we need to examine the raw ingredients which have been used and provided information about the heat processing parameters that would necessarily we need to meet the microbial standards. So, basic need to determine the criteria for the choice of method is accuracy. We have to select that which method is accurate to detect the presence of any kind of microorganism that is present in your food sample or your water sample or anything that you're consuming in your day-to-day life. The second parameter is your sensitivity, that the microorganism or the thing that you have been intaking by the food products, is it sensitive to your health or not? Then is of implementation. There are various equipments, various instruments that have been used to detect the presence of microorganism in your food sample. So we have to check that whether the implementation or the process that we are utilizing to check the microorganism contamination, is it right or not for the particular food product. Then is the speed. Speed, that is basically the test that you're performing today, is it giving you a result in a minimum 2 to 3 hours or 24 hours, or is it taking a week? Now, there are various test methods that can be used to detect the microorganism that have been present in your food. So, although a wide range of technologies have been used for the identification and verification of microorganisms, but among these technologies, the basic traditional methods that have been commercially used are culture media method, immunoassay method, or a polymerase chain reaction method. Now we'll discuss these methods in a brief. Culture media. This is a very older or the traditional used technique for the detection of any kind of contamination in your food product. Say, for example, if you have to check the test or choice for both ready to eat food or the fresh product, you have to go to the culture media method. However, today, immunoassay and PCR methods are more accepted than cultural methods because recent developments of newer testing methods and validation studies have demonstrated that cultural methods aren't suitable for all food groups. So we have developed a different techniques. The traditional way generally used to detect and identify the bacteria from the food or the sample, which is generally based on the mode of applications such as culturing, enumeration, isolation of pre-assumptive colonies for further identification analysis, and if necessary, the food sample must be homogenized, basically concentrated or pre-enriched prior to culturing. Before we culture them in our lab equipments, we have to homogenize and concentrate the food sample so that we can see the colonies or the bacterial colonies in the plate. Bacterial cells can become injured or viable, but non-culturable due to sublethal stresses such as heat, cold, acid, or osmotic shock during the food processing steps. These bacterial cells still pose a threat in the food industry, and therefore, the methods to improve the detection levels of these injured cells have been developed. Now there is a technique, the pre-enrichment of the bacteria in a food sample that can be performed by a non-selective or selective broth culture or by the selective agar overlay technique to resuscitate the injured cells. Another manner in which the detection level of viable cells can be increased is by concentration of the food sample by filtration or centrifugation prior to plating. That is, before plating them on an agar plate or a nutrient media plate, there is a need to filtrate or centrifugate the food sample so that the concentration of the bacterial cells can be easily identified and detected. Pre-treated food samples can then be plated on a non-selective media or a selective media, differential media, or a non-selective media or standard method agar, such as the aerobic plate count that can be used to detect and count the number of bacteria in the sample. Here is a picture that shows a Petri plate. It has an aerobic plate count and this shows the contamination of a bacterial colonies in the food sample. Now, the selective media is a media that contains a compound such as antibiotics, bacteriocins, or growth nutrients, which selectively inhibits the growth of specific organisms. Basically, what is a selective media? That in a media, you can easily select or inhibit the growth of those microorganisms that you don't want. So the desired microorganism will only be able to grow and we can select them. Example, PEMDA medium, polymyxine pyruvate egg yolk mannitol bromothymol blue agar, is a media for the isolation and enumeration of Bacillus cereus in foods. It is able to detect a small number of Bacillus cereus cells and spores in the presence of large number of other food contaminants. The third type is a differential media that contains an indicator that can be a chromogenic substrate or a fluorogenic substrate, which differentiates bacteria by various chemical reactions carried out during growth. That is, it generally shows the presence of a color or a presence of a fluorescence to indicate or to detect the differentiate bacteria on a single medium. By incorporating fluorogenic or chromogenic enzyme substrates into a selective media, identification of microorganisms can be done directly without further subculturing or biochemical tests. These culture medias are then generally based on the bacteria producing specific and exact enzymes for a substrate. So we can detect any kind of contamination that has been present in the plates. As the enzyme then act with the substrate, the bacterial growth will fluorescence or change the color respectively, and thus will help us to identify the different kinds of bacteria or the other types of food-borne pathogens that are present in our sample. Even though the culture methods are time consuming, that is, they generally take a time from 12 hours to more than a week, and basically they are manual laborious, that is, it requires a large amount of skilled persons to handle them with care. The more conventional methods for further subtyping of bacteria includes the study of the phenotypic characteristics of the microorganism. That is, by looking at the presence or looking at the microorganism, you can identify them. These phenotypic methods are basically biotyping, serotyping, and phage typing. In biotyping, some aspects of bacteria can be investigated, such as the biochemical growth requirements, environmental conditions, that is, pH, temperature, or antibiotic resistance, physiological, colony and cell morphology, or on the cell wall composition by microscopy, and membrane compositions such as fatty acids and analysis. On the basis of these features, you can easily identify or detect the presence of any kind of contamination that is present on your food sample. While serological and phage typing concentrates more on the surface differences of bacteria, that is, they not only deals with the morphological features but also the surface differences. Now comes the phages. These are not only used in subtyping bacteria, but they are also used in detecting pathogens directly from food. However, the typing methods are limited since microorganisms are capable of suddenly altering their phenotypic characteristics due to environmental changes or genetic mutations. So, this is a very special kind of method. Now comes the second approach, that is the immunoassay. Immunoassays are basically based on specific binding that is between the antigens and the antibodies. The common example that we read for the immunoassays is the ELISA, enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. Historically, they are used mainly in clinical diagnostics but are becoming popular in rapid detection of microorganisms from food samples. Several types of immunoassays have been used in the food sample analysis, that are enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay (ELISA), immunodiffusion tests, immunofluorescent microscopy, immunomagnetic separation, and immunoprecipitation. Currently, a couple of commercial immunoassay-based detection systems are available to detect the toxins or microbes in the food system. Example, the immunoassay cards, STAD, E. coli 0157H7 detection kit. This is a picture of this immunocard STAD, which is basically used to detect the toxins or the microorganisms or the contaminations that are present in the food product. Because of this accuracy and automation capability, most commercial immunoassay kits for food testings are based on ELISA. It usually takes 1 hour for toxins and 20 to 36 hours for cells. However, ELISA still has its limitation. For instance, without enrichment, the sensitivity of ELISA may not be enough to detect the microorganism at a very low level. Therefore, time is required for the sample analysis, including the pre-enrichment or enrichment procedures that could be much longer than ELISA itself. Then comes the third approach, which is your polymerase chain reactions (PCR) that we have been studying from very earlier classes, and we know that this is a reaction that was being developed by the scientist Kerry Mullis. So, PCR is the amplification of nucleic acid target sequences. The target sequences can be a specific gene or repetitive areas that are present in the sequence. For the foodborne bacterial pathogens, commonly targeted DNA areas are the areas which have a virulence factors, the presence of toxins, the cellular metabolites, and the multi-copy ribosomal RNA. Nucleic acid probes are generally being used increasingly in the food industries because they rapidly detect the presence of any kind of contamination. PCR techniques are used for the early detection of a genetically modified organisms. Those are also known as the transgenic animals in different matrices, identification of different species in meat and dairy products, as well as in the detection of food infection with a food-borne pathogens or a toxicogenic fungi. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, ma'am, can you tell some examples of food technology PCR was there to anything related with food technology, like how can we utilize this kind of technique in food industry?
Yeah, there are the various approaches that have been used. Say, for example, there is a technique immunoassay that is being used for the identification of a foodborne pathogens that are present in the food samples. And other than that, there is a ELISA technique that is being used nowadays in the food industries for the identification of the toxins or the presence of any kind of bacteria that is a source for a food product. And then there is a PCR technique that is being used in the industries nowadays for the detection of a genetic modified organisms, and these have been used in the meat and the dairy products identification for the bacterial contamination.
बता दिया उसने.
Food products के examples suppose solid food is there, liquid food is there. How these food products analysis importance ये food product liquid solid food
Okay, ma'am, can you also tell me a question arises in my mind कि आपने जो method बताए, in between these method, which method is suitable for the industry, like which is the trendiest and convenient method in which there is no time needed and we can easily handle that method?
See, there are different approaches for the identification of these contaminations, but it depends on the type of a food sample. If you have a very a small amount of sample that you want to detect for the presence of a bacteria, you can go for the polymerase chain reaction, because it is basically the amplification. Your sample will be amplified, and thus it will help you to get the result in a very short interval of time. And there are various labs that have been working on this PCR technique for the identification of foodborne pathogens and the other kind of contamination that are present.
Okay, can you start from your second or third slide? Can I see your topic of first and second slide?
Yeah, wait. This is the second. And this is the third. Do you want me to?
Okay, ma'am, there's a picture. I think that is the plating technique. Am I right?
Yeah. This one.
Okay. Okay, it is a short question, like in the industry and in laboratories, nowadays we are using different kind of machines. So people are unaware of that some preventions are there before using the machine. So can you tell me how can we handle the machine, like if there are some preventions, so what kind of preventive measures we should take before using the machine?
Yes, there are different kinds of good lab practices that you have to follow, and these GLP says that you have to be very, you have to take very precautions. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. So there are different kinds of good lab practices that have to be followed by the people who are working on the laboratories and doing the work in the laminar airflow, because it's the contamination that can cause a harm to the bacteria, to the food products, as well as to the humans also. So you need to be very you need to take very precautions. Say that whenever you are there in the laboratory, you need to sanitize yourself to the area that you're working. And then on handling the instruments, you should be very careful because any incident or any mistake can cause a damage or a harm. And when you're working on the laminar airflow and you're doing your microbiological techniques, that is your streaking, pouring, or when you're making your dilutions, you need to be very careful because there is a bacteria that is present in your environment also. So there's a need that you have to do your work very, very carefully. You have to choose the laminar airflow because that's the instrument which will help you to do your any kind of safety techniques with the better results because it avoids or it reduces the contamination that is present in your sample. So proper handling is very required when you are using the microscope, when you are using the Petri plates for the dilutions or for streaking and pouring. The basic need is to choose the bacteria and to strain or to pour it. So yeah, there are some different kinds of precautions that you have to take while you are performing in the laboratory. And when it comes to your PCR machine, then also you have to be very careful during handling your sample because it requires centrifugation, it requires the isolation, and it requires the use of different kinds of reagents. So yes, there's a need that you have to be very precaution. You have to take very precautions, various. So, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, ma'am.
Okay. So, I would like to share some facts that were being left before the here from the culture media, and I would like to tell about that more. So, the culture media have a different approaches, and we can use them for the detection of a food-borne pathogens or any kind of contamination that we have in our food samples. Okay. And there are different techniques that are immunoassays and PCR. These are basic techniques that utilizes a machine, a proper means. The traditional methods are the methods where there is a need of a manual labor, and the immunoassays and the PCR methods and the other various methods that have been used for the detection of pathogens, they require the machine, that is automation. There is a need for the machine to do the work, and it shows the accurate results. So these have been various. There have been various platforms they have been used, and because of the recent developments of the newer testing methods and validation, studies have demonstrated that culture methods are not suitable for all the food groups. That is, sometimes there are chances that they can also do not show the accurate results that have been required by the person. The traditional ways that have been used for the detection and the identification of the bacteria from the food, they are dependent on the culturing, enumeration, isolation of pre-assumptive colonies for further identification analysis. So culturing basically involves the selection of a kind of a bacteria or any kind of this, and that have been used for the plating, subculturing and other. Then, if necessary, the food sample must be homogenized, concentrated, or pre-enriched prior to culturing. This makes the cells more viable, and thus they can show you the better results. And prior doing these things prior to culturing will tell you or will depict you the colonies of a bacteria. Then bacterial cells can become injured or viable, but not culturable due to sublethal stresses, because we know that inside the bacterial cell, the cell is very sensitive to the heat, to the cold, to the acid concentration, and also to the osmotic shock that during the food processing steps, whenever the food is processed, these stages are there. These bacterial cells still pose a threat in the food industry, and therefore there are different kinds of methods that have to be used or to improve for the direction and the detection levels of the injured cells that have been developed. Or you know that the bacteria that are being found in the food samples can be easily identified by them plating on the non-selective media or selective broth culture, or by the selective agar, that is overlay technique to resuscitate the injured cells. So we can easily identify the colonies of a bacteria during the process of microbial techniques that we usually perform in our laminar airflow. Another method in which the detection levels of viable cells can be increased is by concentration of the food sample by filtration or centrifugation, that is prior to plating. See, in this picture, you can easily see that the media, that is the agar media, is generally used to grow the cells, and there is a streaking that is being done, and due to which they can be easily identified the colonies of a bacteria. Then the pre-treated food samples that can be plated on the non-selective, selective, or differential media. These are the different kind of media that we usually make in our labs in order to only grow those organisms or those colonies of bacteria that is being desired by us. So there's a non-selective media, differential media, selective media, and the non-selective media or the standard methods agar, such as the aerobic plate count, that can be used to detect and count the amount of bacteria in the sample. So this plate shows the example of that aerobic plate count. Then there's the selective media, which generally contains a compound जैसे कि antibiotics, bacteriocins, growth nutrient, जो कि selectively inhibit the growth of specific microorganisms. Only those organisms will grow that will be able or to cope up with the antibiotics that have been present in the media, and the other will die. Example, PEMEA media, that is for the isolation and enumeration of a Bacillus cereus, which is a type of or a strain of bacteria that is found in the food samples. It is able to detect small number of Bacillus cereus cells and spores in the presence of large number of other food contaminants. Then the third type is a differential media, which contains an indicator. Basically, that can be a chromogenic that will impart a chromogenic color, or a fluorogenic that will impart the fluorescence, which differentiates bacteria by the various chemical reactions that are being carried out during growth. By incorporating fluorogenic or chromogenic enzyme substrates into a selective media, identification of microorganism can be done directly without the further subculturing or biochemical tests. These culture media are generally based on the bacteria producing specific and exact enzymes for substrate. As the enzyme then act with the substrate, the bacterial growth will fluoresce or change its color respectively. So these are some kind of techniques that we can use to identify the presence of a bacteria that is present in a sample. Other than that, there are the phenotypic methods to identify the DNA or to identify the bacteria that is present in your food sample, that is biotyping, serotyping, and phage typing. Depending on the environmental conditions that you are being giving to your sample on the basis of pH, temperature, or antibiotic resistance, or on the basis of the cell colonies, cell morphology, and cell wall composition by microscopy, and membrane composition, that is such as by fatty acid analysis. Then is the technique of immunoassays that have been used for specific bindings between antigens and antibodies, but they can be used to detect or diagnose the presence of microorganisms. This is a rapid-based method which results in a very limited time, which shows result in a very limited time. It uses different approaches: immunodiffusion, immunofluorescent microscopy, immunoprecipitation, and immunomagnetic separation. Then There's a immunoassay CardStat E. coli 0157. This is a detection kit that has been used to detect the toxins or the microbes that are being found in the food system. And we know that the technique of ELISA generally takes 1 hour for the toxins and maximum 20 to 36 hours for the identification of cells. So ELISA still has its limitation. Without enrichment, there are times where ELISA is not able to detect the microorganisms at a very low level. And this is a third technique that we've been using, that is the polymerase chain reaction that I've told you, that it generally detects the presence of virulence factors or the toxins that have been produced by the bacteria or the fungi, and the cellular metabolites, multi-copy ribosomal RNA, that can also be detected. And these have been used in the various techniques for the identification and detection of genetically modified organisms. So, ma'am, am I audible to you?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
I would like to share some of my experiences that have been going through my industrial trainings when I was being a part of industrial programs. So, can I share those experiences, please?
Yeah, sure, ma'am. That will be very helpful for our students.
Okay.
We can
Okay. So I was being a part of 3 training programs. The first was that was being conducted by the Indian Glycols Limited (IGL), that is in the Bajpur Road, Kashipur, Uttarakhand. And there, I have trained. I was being trained in the department of distillery, where there's a fermentation process that undergoes. So basically, the plant where I worked was a distillery department, and there we used to prepare the slants and we used to prepare the media so that the yeast cell Saccharomyces cerevisiae can use those molasses or those substrate to convert the sugar into the ethanol, that is C2H5OH, your ethanol, which is then distilled to get the alcohol. And there were huge fermenters that were being used for the processing of these cells, yeast cells, for the production of ethanol. And there was a media that was being prepared for the growth of the Saccharomyces cerevisiae yeast that is being used in the fermentation process. And it was being fed on the molasses or the sugar that the sugar cane was being dried, and that the extract was used as a substrate for the yeast cells to grow and to optimize it for the production of ethanol. And after that, there were been different tests that we've been performed on that, and those tests were to detect the presence of the ethanol that is being present. So this was my first training where I have been taught about different samples and different the ethanol producing plants. There was a plant which was being used for the production of ethanol, and then there was a plant that was being used for distillery purposes, where the distillation was being done in order to purify that ethanol and convert it into the alcohol that have been exported to the various areas. Then I did my second internship on there was a lab of a pathology lab, and there I did my training in the topic of that serum analysis. The serum that you isolate from your blood, that serum is basically being isolated, and there were various tests that were being performed in order to check the presence of different types of tests that have been conducted in a laboratory. They were used to perform the ELISA, they were used to perform the Vidal test that was being used for the detection of typhoid, the disease that is caused by the presence of the bacteria. So different approaches were being used. There was a total leukocyte test that we have to perform. We have to check the presence of the WBCs. We have to work on the different samples. Then there was a bioanalyzer which was being used to check the presence of lipid profile that is in your blood, that is in your body. So these were some of the kinds of pathological tests that I did in my graduation years. And then in my masters, I took an internship in the Central Molecular Research Lab that is being placed in Dehradun. It has been associated with the Mahant Indresh Hospital that is in Dehradun itself. And there were the samples that were being tested on a daily basis. I did my training on the instrumentations. There were various instruments that were being placed in the industries in there, and we used to perform different experiments for the isolation of a genomic DNA, and that can be from a plant source, that can be from your cheek cells, that can be your genomic DNA. So we performed various experiments on the genomic DNA isolation for the HLA, human leukocyte antigen count, for the other HPV viruses that were being a cause of papillomavirus, human papillomavirus, and that is a major cause of cervical cancers that we see in a human, in a females. Basically, they are more affected due to HPV. And the samples were being collected from the patients, and we used to perform different experiments to check whether the sample that has been given to us is either HPV or HCV positive or a negative sample. We used different kinds of instruments there, like we used laminar air flow, and there was instrument your centrifuge which were being used. Other than that, the PCR machines were used. There were the training PCR kits we used there. And yes, so basically there was a various approaches that we have gone through there. We learned a lot. I had a very great experience working there and being a part of a training program. So yeah, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, ma'am, for sharing your experience. And can you tell our students how can we prepare for the further competitive exams, like through which method it could be easy to appear in GATE, UGC NET, what kind of syllabus we should prefer in books?
Yeah, there are different kinds of exam. Okay, that depends on what type of future you want. Say, for example, the students who are very willing to be a part of fellowship programs that have been funded by the government. So there are ICAR exams, there are DRDOA, and then there is a GATE exam that provides you the fellowship from the government organization. And other than that, you have UGC NET, you have CSIR NET, and other platforms provides you various kinds of tests. And apart from that, you can also have the experiences of the various industrial trainings, because this experiences will help you to grow better, to gain knowledge better, because the life science is a field where your research is very important. You should know how to practically handle the things, because it's all based on the laboratory skills. So yes, if you want to develop a career in your research field, you have to go to the different kinds of the government exams that have been provided, because the scholarships have been given to the students, and their fellowships are being provided to the students to have a great future ahead. Various organizations are providing the funds to the students by conducting different kinds of exams at state level, national level. And apart from that, you can also pursue for the PhD programs from the universities that are top ranked, from the private universities or from the government universities. That is up to you. There's no barrier for the people who are pursuing masters. They can go to that, because I am also a master's student, and right now I'm giving my year to practice all these things so that I can also be able to get the eligibility that is being provided by the other organizations such as GATE, UGC NET, CSIR NET, DRDO, And then there is the Indian Institute of Immunology, which is providing the different kinds of funded projects. Then there is global universities out there that have been providing you the different kinds of projects that you can work on. And apart from that, you can also organize yourself into the Biotechnica and the other food funded जितने भी projects हैं उनमें.
Okay, thank you for sharing this, ma'am. Ma'am, I think I also prefer that industrial knowledge is important for the student, in my opinion. So, can you tell some important facts about internship and training? कि whether they are getting the stipend like जो normal training होती है, whether they are getting the stipend or not? Because nowadays students want a stipend. So, is it possible? Is there some place they can get the stipend or not?
Yeah, basically you have to see which kind of field do you want for yourself. Say, for example, if you're a student of a microbiology, then you have to target to those industries and to those fields where the people are entertaining the students of microbiology or biotechnology or food technology or dairy technology. So life sciences has provided you various aspects to where you can attain for the training, the industrial training. Yes, there are various kinds of organizations that provides you stipends, that provides you some kind of scholarships or some kinds of financial help where the people can gain their industrial training also, and they can get amount of a token money from them. So yeah, there are various approaches you can use if you want. You have to research for that first. And there are various government bodies such as the Delhi University and the JNU you have already heard about. These are some universities which provides you the training stipend if you are selected for their training programs. The AIMS Institute is providing you the different kinds of training stipends. And there are some private universities also that are providing you the training, or private industrial areas also that are providing you training stipend. But yeah, you have to use your approach first. You need to know which field you belong, which field you want to explore, because it's all about your exploring and your researching skills.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. Well, that was a very common, curious question among students, I think. That's why I asked you.
Yes, I know, because when I was being in my master's and my graduation, I was also very keen to know where should I target for a better future, where should I target for a better stipend, where should I target to get my industrial training. Yeah, this is a question that can be raised to any people that are being their academic sessions. So yeah, I know.
Exactly. And instead of working in a farm, they also want to do their entrepreneur. Like they want to become the entrepreneur, they want to start their own farm. Some students are like that only.
Yes, this is nowadays the people want to have their independency. And talking about myself, I too want to work to the organizations and bio entrepreneurship or the different kind of entrepreneurships that have been provided by the various fields. They are helping students to grow more. They are working on their personal abilities. They are working on the efficiency of a person to speak, to stand out from the crowd and to work. So yes.
Okay. Well, it was an informative talk with you, ma'am. We have gained a lot of knowledge regarding microbiological examination. And thank you for your valuable time and knowledge that you have shared with us, your industrial knowledge. Because this is very important kind of question. In the final year, students are like confused whether they have to get to do job, and if they are placed, whether this is right decision or not. Or these kind of questions are very common among students. So thank you for sharing your time and knowledge.
Yeah.
And yes, ma'am.
Actually, I would like to sincerely thank the Parul University for giving me the opportunity so that I can deliver my experience or my knowledge to the students out there. And I'm sincerely thankful to the Department of Sciences Applied Sciences, that they have given me the opportunity so that I can deliver this experience of mine. So, very, very thankful, very, very thank you to all the people who helped me to deliver this slide today.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. With this, I'm ending the webinar.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you so much. Thanks. Thank you.
You can now leave the meeting, ma'am.
Okay.